welcome to this video on how to find exponential equations in the form of y equals a times b to the x. In order for us to find these equations, there's two things we have to be able to find. The two things are the starting value and the multiplier. The starting value is the first number you write down, and the multiplier is the second number you write down in parentheses to the power of x. Now, to find the starting value, we'll talk about that first. Where am I going to find that starting value in different types of problems? If I'm looking at a table, if I can find the zero term given to me, then I have the starting value handed right to you. If you can see in a graph that the graph is crossing right at 3 here, then I would say my starting value is at 3. If you see a word problem talking about starting with something, initially having something, or beginning with something, you're given the starting value right in the problem. But not always are you going to be given the starting value. You may have to find that by getting the multiplier first. So here's an example of a table that has both given to you where you have the starting value, but then you have numbers that are going up by 1. I would call that a standard gap between the coordinates. When you have a standard gap, you can simply just go next divided by previous. The next is the next number down, and the previous is the previous number that is in the table. So if you take 24 divided by 12, you get 2. If you take 12 divided by 6, the next and previous, you get 2. It doesn't matter where you go in the problem, but the answer then would be a multiplier of 2. So the answer to the equation would be y equals, starting with 3, times 2 to the x, and that's your equation. Now, it may not be this simple. You may not have numbers that are back to back like they are in here. So when they don't increase by 1, maybe you have a table like this that helps explain. I'm going to try to help you explain this one here. In this problem, you're given two coordinates, 2, 12, and 6, 192. Now, to get from one term to the next here, there's a gap of 4 units between these two coordinates. When that happens, that means you've multiplied the multiplier 4 times to get from 12 down to 192. To summarize that in an equation, it could look like this. Starting with 12 times your multiplier 4 times in a row equals 192. To solve for x, you could find, or the multiplier here, you could simply divide by 12 to both sides, you get 16. Then take 16 and then to get rid of that fourth power, you do the fourth root of both sides. Now the way you do the fourth root of 16 on your calculator would be like this. If you take 4, type in the 4 that you have right here first, then go math 5, parentheses, and if I wanted to do the part that made the 16, which is 192 divided by my previous 12, that's my next and previous, and I get the answer of 2, which is my multiplier. And I've just figured out the multiplier, and therefore I can almost find my equation, but I have the multiplier. So let me talk about next what you do when you have a multiplier, but you don't have the zero term given to you. In this example here, a different kind of situation, same context and same sequence at least of numbers. Let's say I have a multiplier of 2, just like I figured out earlier, but I have the fifth term at 96. To get back to the beginning, you have two options. You could do divide by hand, just divide by 2, 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 5 times in a row on your calculator. That's a lot of work. You could also simply do the option number 2, which is taking 96 and dividing it by your multiplier, which is 2, and doing it 5 times in a row and summarizing that with an exponent. So if you take 96 divided by 2 to the fifth power, because there's 5 moves back to here, you'll get the answer of 3 as well, which is your starting value. So if you have a starting value of 3 and a multiplier of 2, the equation again would look like this. Y equals, start with 3, multiplier of 2 to the power of x, and that is how you find the equation. Now let me give you a problem that works from the very beginning and out to the end. Here's a question, just like you saw earlier. This problem here has 2 coordinates given to you. So the way you start this out is by first of all writing down 0 and where these numbers fit in the table. So then I would have a 1 and then a 4. My 1 is going to be at 1080, and my 4 is at 787 and 0.32. The next thing I need to do is, since I don't have the starting value given to me, I need to find this, the multiplier first. So I'm going to take my next and previous, and the gap that I have here is a gap of 3. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to find my multiplier by going like this. Multiplier equals next divided by previous, and the gap of how far apart they are in the problem. So my gap here is a 3, so I'm going to do the third root of 787.32 divided by 1080. And then we whip out our calculator here, and we try to figure that out. So here's how you do it again. You take the third root, 3, go math 5, parentheses 787.32 divided by 1080, and then I get an answer of 0.9. So I just found an answer of 0.9, so my multiplier equals 0.9, and now I got to find my starting value. Well, it's only 1 move back, so instead of doing a power of 1, I'm just going to say take 1080 and divide it by 0.9, and the answer comes out to be 1200. Now I've got my starting value, I've got my multiplier, I can now write the equation. Y equals 1200 times 0.9 to to the x power. It's as simple as that. Hopefully this video helps, and good luck in trying to work through these questions of finding exponential equations.